What is up, friends? Rob here, the Medicare Minister, and I'm back with a brand new Spitting Fire podcast interview for you today. And today I got my man from Lead Heroes, Mr. Glen Shelton. Glen, will you say what's up to everybody?
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
Yeah, Mr. Glen, I know I don't know why I'm calling you Mr. Glen, but it just sounded good. It sounded very professional. Glen is going to spit some fire today. He's going to bring some value. And today we're going to talk about leadership and leads. So you want to stay tuned. You want to watch this whole interview. I believe it's going to be jam-packed with a lot of value and content. But as always, I want to remind you real quickly before we dive into the heart of that, to like, comment, subscribe, please turn on your notifications. That way you're notified every time we drop fresh content like this. And so, Glen, I'm so excited, man. I've been looking forward to this. I think leads, especially in our industry, the insurance industry, is one of those mysterious things, subject matter sometimes. And so before we dive into that, tell us a little bit about Glen. Give us a 30,000 foot view of your story, maybe past a little bit of transition time up to what you're doing today.
Awesome. I'll give a quick overview. Again, thank you so much for having me on. I'm really excited to chat with you and then also, your audience. But yeah, to give you guys a quick kind of overview of myself, who I am and how I got into Lead Heroes, and what it is today. So I started off as, to really go back even further, I was getting into like the Wolf of Wall Street. This was about 10 years ago. Okay.
Sure.
And I was at the time working a retail sales position. I was working with Verizon Wireless, making great money. I was, had more than I needed to take care of myself and my family. But there was this overwhelming feeling like I wanted to do something, for myself, essentially become a business owner, right?
Sure.
And for some reason, in my head, this took me from where I was at to insurance, jumped into the only logical explanation, right?
Right.
Jumped straight into insurance. The agency I was at, kind of a very standard, IMO model. You'll see a lot on the life insurance side without naming names. Okay. So there's and I was very grateful for the opportunity to get started to learn. But after doing that for a couple of years, I transitioned to becoming an independent agent. And I'm like, okay, I want to do this for myself. I'm confident in my sales ability. I'm confident in my product knowledge. I've sold hundreds of thousands of dollars in life premium at this point. Like, surely I can figure this out for myself. Sure. Kind of the missing piece, of course, was the lead generation, the marketing. Sure. How can I go out on my own and continue to have success, continue to stay in front of people, get prospects, coming to me, or I'm going to them, and ultimately convert those to sales. So that's when I started trying, a little bit of everything, direct mail, internet leads, at the time, this was before soundboard technology had been ruled illegal, but avatar leads were very hot for those who remember.
Sure.
I'm not sure, Rob, if you ever use those or remember those, but
never used them, but I've heard of them. Yeah.
Yeah. So ultimately, I settled on the idea that I could hire someone to make calls for me, and they can either cold call or call old leads and rewarm them up, or do appointment setting on leads I already had. And, started with one person part-time. Fast forward to where we're at today, you guys. Over 130 people on payroll. Almost all of those are exclusively doing lead generation or appointment setting, for final expense and Medicare. So, and that's kind of the quick 5-minute story of who I am and why I started Lead Heroes and where I'm at today.
Sure. And I want to dive into something that you said a few minutes ago, because I think it's very important. And of course, I not only do I have people in the insurance industry that watch the podcast, I interview people in different spaces, but I love what you said. You said there was a time when you just begin to say, I want something for myself, right? I want to own my own thing. Right. So let me ask you this. What was there a defining moment that you said, you know what, I deserve to win and so to speak. I'm going to bet on myself. Was there a book that you read? Was there a mentor, a video that you watched, or what? Can you share a little bit more, dive deeper into that?
Yeah, it's like you're reading my mind, Rob. You know, The 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. That was the book I read.
Okay.
And again, I went into it. I was already kind of spinning my wheels in that direction.
Yeah.
But when I read that book, I think the thing that clicked for me that Tim really eloquently wrote, as far as like a key principle of the book, is I had this preconceived notion of what a company was before I read the book. And again, I was working for Verizon Wireless at the time, $1 billion corporation. I had this very ideal, like, okay, this is what a business looks like. It's got a big building, lots of employees. It's spending a lot of money on marketing, on utilities, all of it, right? And after reading the 4-Hour Work Week, I realized, a business can be one person. A business can be one website. It can be small. And what defines success isn't up to you or my parents or my friends or other family members, right? I can make 40 grand a year on my own business, and that can be that can be considered massive success on my own terms. And that book, after I read that, it was just kind of like this click for me where I was like, yeah, it really doesn't matter what this looks like or how much money it generates. I can just go out and do whatever it is I want to do. And and I don't know, that was kind of the defining moment, I guess, for tipping the scale, you know?
Sure. No, and I love that. And listen, I just want to stop for a minute here.
Yeah.
What Glen is saying, guys, and I'm going to look straight in the camera here. Listen, what better time than 2022 to bet on yourself, to invest in yourself? And I love what Glen is saying. We tend to let other people define success to us, right?
100%.
So let me ask you this. Let's stay there for a minute, Glen. Define success to Glen. What does success mean in Glen's eyes?
So our mission statement at Lead Heroes is, you know, I call it it's really a win-win-win. It's our triple win situation. It's being able to have an employee, which at Lead Heroes, most of our employees are based out of the Philippines, being able to employ them. So we're supporting them and their family. They're helping a beneficiary get the insurance coverage that they want.
Right.
And in return, it's an insurance agent getting paid, supporting their family. So it's this ability to help not just one person, but when it works correctly, we're able to help all three people. And that's success for me right now. And at Lead Heroes, it's being able to put food on the table for both families, on the, you know, my employee, the agent who's buying the leads or the appointments, and then at the same time helping that Medicare beneficiary. That's my success. And again, it doesn't matter if that's on a scale of 1 to 1 or we're talking thousands. But that is success for me. You know, that's how I personally define it, is when that system is working correctly.
Yeah. No, I like it, man. It is a win-win-win. You know, it sounds like in the model that you have. You know, I was listening to, I don't know if it was a podcast, because I know you do a podcast with Christian Brindle.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was that podcast, but as I was getting ready for this, I'd listened to some of your content. But you had talked about you used to door knock. I can't remember. I think it was in security systems. I've been there. I used to sell ADT security systems back in the day. There you go. So I get it. We'd ride a van in the neighborhood and they drop us off and we'd go knocking, that's right. Knocking like crazy. But let me ask you this. How did that prepare you for what you're doing now? Did it give you empathy for agents out there in the industry to go, gosh, if I could just devise a system that could generate a better method of generating leads?
Yeah. I mean, I did it for a full 12 calendar months, which might not sound like a lot to some people who are listening, but you know, I would implore it. I was just talking to my nephew. He's a freshman in college, and I was telling him, I'm like, you should go knock. I told him, like, I did the same thing. It was ADT, it was home security systems. Yeah. You get dropped off. And I think on the marketing end, it gave me a whole new respect for the ability to drive. Like, being a great salesman is one thing, but then having a prospect driven to you
Yeah.
And being able to facilitate that sale at any point is like, it's like a whole nother level. So when I spent, a whole year of my life just banging on doors, no marketing dollars, it's just purely me going out and trying to find people.
Sure.
It definitely gave me a whole new respect for marketing and being able to, again, scale your sales without scaling your time, because your time really doesn't scale, right? There's only so much time you have every day.
Right. And so let me ask you this, kind of staying there, and your experience in dealing with obviously agents across the country, like do you see some that really excel in the sales but really suck in the marketing or driving prospects, or some that are really good at lead generation but suck on the sales? Have you kind of seen that in your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Gary, I love Gary V, right?
Yeah.
Rob, you kind of remind me of Gary V a little bit. You got that same energy, man. I love it.
Man.
But Gary V talks about self-awareness and how important it is, especially when you're, whether you're driving your own sales or your business.
Sure.
So I think having a self-awareness, some of these agents, right, and understanding like, hey, I'm a great salesperson,
sure,
but I need help with marketing, and that's not my strong suit, because I have seen it. I've seen all sides of it. And generally speaking, I think most insurance agents are great salespeople, but I think they really struggle with the branding, the marketing, driving those prospects where they need to go, product knowledge, all those other things that you have to kind of spin, right, to stay afloat in this business.
Sure.
Yeah,
No,
absolutely.
I totally agree. And I'm very self-aware. And I tell people this all the time. I mean, you put me in front of, 100 people, I'm going to close 75 to 85 of them. But I do struggle and have struggled in my sales career of generating that. Right. And so I agree with you. I think, why waste the time when you can outsource that, get quality prospects directed to you, and you just operate in what I call your 10, right? My 10 is closing people, right? And so, there's nothing wrong with outsourcing to companies like you and driving those prospects, at least until you build a pipeline, a referral system, whatever the case may be. So I totally agree. So let me ask you this, and I wrote this one down because I didn't want to forget to ask you. Define what a lead is, right? Because this is like a mystery, it seems like, in our industry. A lead is this, a lead is this. What is a lead to you? What does it mean to you, or how do you define it?
That's a great question. And it is kind of a mystery, because the biggest struggle with answering this question is everyone has this preconceived definition, right, before you talk to them on what a lead is, right? So I think at the most basic fundamental level, a lead is really just an excuse to talk to someone.
That's
right.
Good. Yeah.
If you, again, to kind of go back to Wolf of Wall Street, when he's on the phone that first time, he's using a direct mail lead. It's just someone pulled it out of a magazine, filled it out, dropped in the mail. They really didn't want to talk to him. If you remember that conversation, he was like, I'm a post office worker. Like, I don't have time for this. And he had to keep him on the phone just because he filled that out and mailed it in. Again, that's a high intent lead. He took the time out of his day to do that. He still wasn't that interested.
Right.
It still took salesmanship to take him over the edge. And so again, you have this moving target of intent. Some leads are going to have very little intent. Some leads might have a higher intent. Sure. But regardless of where they're at on that scale, it's up to the salesperson to drive that thing home. And I think the biggest misconception is, even if it's a high intent lead, I think a lot of people are like, oh, well, this is an application. Like, this should become a sale automatic. No, you still have to do the work. You have to show up and do the work to still push that person from prospect to close sale.
So let's just destroy the myth right now. In your words, is there such a thing as the best leads, right? Because that's what everybody wants is you're getting the good leads and the best leads. So we're going to hear it from Mr. Glen himself. Tell us, Glen, is there such a thing as the best leads?
It doesn't exist, you guys. It's all, and I'm telling you right here, because again, when I can take essentially the same lead, right? It's the same people calling, the same data sets we're using. When I can take essentially the same exact lead in almost the same area and give those to two different agents. And one agent will come back and say, wow, that was incredible, Glenn. I need as many as you can get. And then the very next agent says, oh my gosh, scam alert. I couldn't close any of these, horrible leads.
Yeah.
And so that's where it really, this is what defines whether it's the best lead or not.
Yeah.
Is as a salesperson, are you willing to leverage what you have and to get the results you want? Because if you don't show up, you don't have the mindset, that lead's gonna suck. But this idea that there's a silver bullet lead, if I just had these leads, Rob, then I would be successful. It's really up to you as a salesperson. It's not the marketing, you guys.
Yeah, and it's interesting you went there, because one of the next questions that I wanted to ask is, what type of mindset does one have to possess or have when in buying leads? Can you give us some words that define that and articulate that?
Yes.
Expound on that a little bit more.
Yep. So there's so many different KPIs. So a KPI would be like a metric that you track as a business owner, as a salesperson. Okay. So there's so many different KPIs that people will track that I think sometimes they'll get lost in some of these metrics. We talked about closing percentage already. That is a great metric, but that might not be the key metric to track. So to simplify it for me and what most marketers will tell you, like, here's the two metrics, you guys. What was your cost to generate that sale?
Right.
And what is the lifetime value of the client that you just gained? Those are the two KPIs. If you really want to measure the success of the leads, and again, from a mindset point of view, if you just go through the first 5 leads and you get told no, then your mindset is automatically, oh man, these leads suck. Okay. But on the flip side, if you work all the leads to the bone, and then you go back to those metrics, those KPIs, and you say, okay, well, I took in 5 clients, they're all worth $1,000, and I spent, $1,500. Well, my profit then would be $3,500. Wow. What a great marketing strategy. Let's double down on this. So I think a lot of times people get lost though, and they're either looking at the wrong metrics, or they're so focused in the anecdotal evidence of, well, the last person I called yelled at me, therefore these leads suck.
Right.
And they just don't. You need to focus on the system, the rinse and repeat, the metrics. Let the numbers do the job, do the storytelling for you. The numbers don't lie.
Yeah. And would you agree that one must possess really a long-term thinking mindset? Like, because we live in this, to use a Talladega Nights quote, shake and bake culture where, we want it instantly. We want it, microwavable, so to speak. Do you believe that someone, when they invest in leads, they want it now, so they call the 5 people, all these leads suck, scam, whatever. When in reality, they need to have a long-term growth mindset or a long-term thinking mindset. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And to take that a step further, when you take a business owner or an agency owner, especially like someone who has previous success under their belt, where they have done this multiple times, how would they look at it? I can tell you guys, again, from doing this for almost 10 years now, that someone who's utilized paid marketing successfully, they're gonna pay for the marketing, again, whatever form that is, whether that's lead heroes, billboards, internet leads, direct mail, whatever it is. You pay for the marketing, you take in whatever that marketing generated, you work those prospects, those leads for 90 days, because again, it takes follow-up. You might have to call some of these leads 5 or 10 times. And then after 90 days, that's a really clear indication at that point where you can pull the results and say, okay, this is how many we closed right away. Here's the leads that we were able to close after following up with them for 30 to 90 days. This is what our actual final results really look like. So I don't even know if long-term, I mean, it's more of is quarterly really long-term? I don't even think that's long-term, but again, it goes back to we're goldfish now, right? We have this instant, everyone wants it right now, right now, right now. And if you can stretch that out even a little bit, instead of looking at the results at the end of the week, why don't you look at 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks? And it definitely helps to elongate your mindset, focus on a little further down the road instead of tomorrow or next week.
Yeah. And so, would that be some of the advice that you would give to someone? Like if somebody's an insurance agent now, maybe struggling, needs a lead flow, or maybe they're starting a new agency, what advice would you give them? I know we've talked a little bit about it, but just something that rises at the top that you say, hey, before you invest in these leads, these are 1, 2, 3 things that you need to know. So that way you go into it with the right mindset, the right thinking. Is there something that rises at the top that you would say, this is what I would say?
I mean, a few things come top of mind. One is having a budget in place.
Yep.
I can't tell you the agents who have utilized our service over the years. It seems like the ones who take their last $500 and give it to us, right? Or the last whatever their final budget amount is, right? And then it's like, oh man, I needed this to work. It didn't work how I was hoping it would, or it didn't work as quickly, like we just talked about.
Yeah.
And then they get really upset. So having a budget in place where you're not in need of money, because again, it takes time to convert that marketing into usable dollars, right? Even if it goes well, it can take time. So keeping that in mind with a realistic budget where you can actually spend the money and you're not worried about it, being organized. Again, as an agent myself previously, you guys, I started out using paper. It was paper direct mail leads. I had a folder. It wasn't a very great organized process or system. The technology that's available today, you'd be insane not to use some type of technology to help you stay organized. Find a CRM system, client relationship manager that you're comfortable with. You don't have to be an expert with it, but just something that can help you stay organized and follow up and stay on top of these leads, on top of those prospects. So have a budget, stay organized, have a CRM, and then also have some experience under your belt too. If you've never sold a single policy, it's probably not the time to drop $5,000 on leads. Maybe bang on some doors like we talked about. Put some sweat equity in, figure out how it works. And then once you're a little more comfortable, you have at least some experience. I'm not trying to say there's some magic limit or rule, like 5 policies, then you're good, but have some experience before you actually do spend the money on marketing. So that's kind of 3 off the top of my head.
Sure. So let me ask you this too, just overall, I know that's different for people in different states, but if there was a number across the country, what do you see just overall closing ratio if somebody buys like 100 leads or 50, whatever the number is? Do you is it 15%, 10%, or do you even have those kind of numbers?
Yeah. So I mean, we have a lot of the business that we work with now is call center business. Okay. So I mean, most of our clients are selling over the phone. So how the leads get worked is going to be a huge variable in what the closing percentage is. So if I show up on the doorstep of every single lead and I'm knocking on the door and again, if it's lead heroes are saying, hey, you just got this call the other day, or you have a direct mail lead and you're like, hey, did you fill this out? Obviously that should yield a much higher closing percentage versus a call center where all you're relying on just your voice, just the phone. You're going to typically close less when you're going over the phone. So as with the data that we have from our clients, a minimum of 10% is really the rule of thumb. Like if you're not at least closing 1 out of 10 leads, there's probably something you're doing that's handicapping yourself or slowing yourself down. Maybe it's something you're saying, maybe it's, a carrier that you should have that you're not utilizing. It could be a million different things.
Sure.
And it could be much higher than that. And again, if you're selling face to face, it should be probably double that or higher, right? And all sorts of variables in between. Again, the other biggest variable in this closing percentage is follow-up. your persistence. Are you going to call every lead 10 times? Because if you call every lead 10 times, you're probably going to get close to an 80% contact rate with all the leads. And if you talk to 80% of the leads, then you're going to get the most out of them. Right. Whether that's appointments, presentations, or sales, whatever metric you're looking at, the first metric is contact rate. So it's, how many leads did you take in? How many leads did you actually get to speak to? And then, appointments, presentations, sales, and kind of all the way down the funnel.
No, I think that's some great advice. One of the things that I started doing, my wife and I, especially when you're dealing with them out of state, because we live in Mississippi and we do Tennessee, Alabama. I have found that when I send them a letter with our logo and our cards with a picture on it, and it may say something like, hey, you got a phone call from our corporate office the other day, blah, 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 just something. I have found that people have called us back on that. Or if I do get a hold of them, I go, hey, I sent you that letter, by the way, did you get it? And I felt like sometimes that's a way to refresh it. Yes, it is a little bit more cost. I know what people are saying, but the reality is if you're not willing to invest in your business, then you don't need to do this, right? You got to be willing to invest. And if that one or two letters, that you send out every so often helps re-spark that or re-warm that up, and you do 4 apps off of it or 3 apps or whatever, it was definitely well worth it. So I agree. I love some of the tips that you're giving. So let's transition into leadership a little bit, and we'll come back to leads when we get ready to close out. What is one high impact habit? That's what I like to call them, high impact habit. What is one habit that rises at the top in your life, maybe that you've learned, whether it's through reading a book, through a mentor, that you've cultivated in your own life that's contributed to the success that you've had today? Is there a habit that rises to the top?
One thing that I've been doing for several years now, and I'm trying to remember exactly, I don't know if it was a mentor or a book or an article I read, but I try, I mentioned earlier, I've got over 130 people on payroll today.
Sure.
And it's really easy as a leader to distance yourself from your staff and not in the sense that I'm trying to neglect my staff, but in the sense that I've got my own stuff I've got to do during the day. And I clearly don't have time to talk to 130 employees on a daily basis, especially on an individual basis, right? I mean, it's one thing to send a group message, but at least I try every quarter to have a 5 to 10 minute conversation with every single person in my company. Because again, there's you can have your layers of management and you can tell people hey, if there's something going on, just pass that up the chain, but you're not going to get a true idea of what's going on inside your business or your company, especially when you have, several employees or hundreds of employees. You get a much clearer insight when you have that quick conversation or quick touch, 5, 10, 15 minutes. I would even say it's worth shutting the business down for a day or two just to talk to everybody and see where everyone's at. What's going on? Is there any problems? Is there anything you would change? Just again, getting that information, getting that intel, because they're going to know better than even myself what's going on. They're the ones that are making the cogs go around, right? I mean, I'm trying to manage it all and grow it and scale it at the top, but that's been, I think, very impactful for me as keeping a pulse on really how everyone's doing as often as I can.
So I think that's great feedback, right? You got to know your people. You got to be willing, for lack of better words, to be intimate with your people, whether it's a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. I totally agree. What is 100%. Let's stay here for a minute. What is one lesson as an owner and a leader that you've learned, even if it was the hard way over the past few years as a leader, that you go, gosh, I really grown in that area? I mean, obviously you talked about meeting with your people, but is there another area that was maybe just a hard lesson to learn that you finally learned and you're leading from now?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot. The longer, the longer I'm in business, the more mistakes I make, the more I'm learning from what I've done. To kind of go back to the Gary Vee thing where it's self-awareness, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? I think I'm a great CEO. I think I am great at sales, and I do have, I think, kind of a bit of a natural leadership, but what I lack is on the managing the finances. That's not my strong suit, right?
Sure.
Tracking the pennies, the dollars
Sure.
and cents on a day-to-day
Right.
basis. That's not naturally something I get out of bed and I'm like, let's look at this spreadsheet. You guys,
Right.
let's see. Yeah. So bringing in talent in that to help facilitate that role, which it took me, again, years of failing to finally get to that point where I'm like, I'm bringing someone in to do this and to keep me on target for what I know are my goals and, you know, what my expenses are and taxes and all that. That was like a night and day difference. That was like a huge, huge change for me. And again, it took a lot of failure to get to that point where I was like, I'm bringing someone in and I'm paying someone and, you know, the cost is what it is. It's just something I'm not going to spend my time doing, but it has to get done, you know?
Now, and I love the word that you mentioned, failure, in there multiple times, because you know this, and I truly believe this, that every leader begins to realize that if you're a true leader, you fail forward, right? It's part of the process.
Yeah.
It's just all part of the process. And just because you fail in this season or make this mistake is not predictive of your future. Right. It doesn't make you a failure. It just makes you someone who's human, and you made a mistake. Now learn from it, grow from it, let it teach you something, and move forward. So I definitely love what you're saying there, is that failure is part of the process. So let me ask you this. This is maybe a question that you can speak to the audience. Why do so many people struggle with self-awareness? Is it just pride? Is it ego? Is it we just don't want to hurt our own feelings, or we don't want to? We can't handle the truth, as Jack Nicholson would say. I mean, what is it that you think keeps leaders or owners from really being self-aware?
I think there's a lot. I mean, you just mentioned a few. I think there's a lot, and I don't think it's necessarily one thing. I think what I can speak to from like my own personal experience is, you know, the word sycophant comes to mind. Having someone who's close to you, whether that's in your company or maybe it's a friend or a family member, who is maybe just telling you what they think you want to hear and not telling you the truth, and you just buy into what you're being told, that can get really dangerous really fast. And what I've found, best way to combat that is to, again, be willing to do the work yourself. Right. Because like I mentioned, with being able to talking to everybody, right? So like if I'm talking to a manager in my company and they're saying everything's fine, well, great. I think everything's fine. I'm buying into what I'm being told. Well, during my quarterly review, if I'm talking to their entire team underneath and I'm hearing over and over, you know, some issues that are coming up, well, I'm being fed what that person thought I wanted to hear. That manager is telling me what they thought I wanted to hear, and they're not giving me the truth. Right. So, I mean, that's just one example of where we can lack self-awareness. You know, I mean, there's a lot that can keep you from really seeing what's going on.
Yeah. And it's interesting. And I'm the same way. You know, the people that I've mentored, discipled, whatever word you want to use. I always tell them, quit surrounding yourself with yes men or yes women. Right. Somebody's got to tell you no. Someone's got to be able to tell you, hey, that's not cool. Hey, check yourself. Hey, this is a blind spot. And I truly believe you'll never lead at the highest level until you're intentional about doing that. Right. I'm the same way. I'm not.
No, I totally agree.
Yeah. I'm not a details oriented guy. I'm just not. You throw spreadsheets and all that in my face. I mean, I want to barf. I want to puke. I want to run. Right. But you say, hey, let's go motivate 5,000 people on the fly. Let's empower people. Let's cast vision. Man, I'm all in. And so it took, as a former church planner and pastor, because that's the other side of what I've done for years. I had to surround myself with people that, you know, could fill in the gaps where I was weak. And it was when we begin to do that, I believe as leaders, we begin to really, really, you know, lead at a high level. So thank you for sharing that. That's some really good advice. Let me ask you this. What about a leadership principle? That was a habit that we talked about. And forgive it, the train, I live in Mississippi, in North Mississippi. The train goes through our town about 30 times a day, it seems like. So you may hear a train in the background. But let me ask you this. What about leadership principle? right? We talked about habits, but is there a principle that you've learned that you've really cultivated in your life, right? And that you lead from? Is there one that just rises to the top that you say, this is how I really lead? This is a principle that is my part of the foundation of how I lead.
So for those who, I'm sure most people know who this person is, Matthew McConaughey. Okay.
Sure.
He released a memoir called Greenlight.
Okay.
Greenlight. It's great. It's fantastic. But there's a quote in there that he said that it was the screensaver on my phone for a long time. And it's something like I try to really live by. It's less impressed, more involved.
Okay.
So again, it kind of goes back to the ego thing. Like, doesn't, okay, you generate $1 million, you generate $10 million. Like, you can't buy in like your own hype. You can't buy into this idea. And you also have to really keep your eye on the idea too, that whatever success you've had, it can go away tomorrow. So the principle that I try to live by is really doing the work, being obsessed with the journey and not getting caught up in, the results, not getting caught up in some sort of popularity that may or may not be gained, right, by what you're doing. And I think the more you get obsessed with the work and the journey, I think everything else kind of seems to follow that, everything else can kind of fall in line, so that's a principle I've really been trying to live by, I'd say, for the past 24 months. That's something I've been focused on.
Yeah. No, thanks for sharing that. I ask everybody that comes on the podcast this question. If there was one word that you could use to describe you, what would that one word be?
Driven.
Driven.
Driven. I mean, I've always, I guess another word you could maybe workaholic would be another that kind of falls into that same category, but it's not about, like I just kind of said a minute, it's not about the money or the success or being known or anything like that. It kind of goes back to that core mission statement of, when you see that success and the ripple effect of what that success can do to individuals, when I've had employees reach out to me and they're crying because I changed their life. And I'm not even thinking about that, right? Like I'm trying to figure out how do I keep the business together? How do I grow the business?
Right.
I'm doing all these different things. I'm not even thinking about the people I'm impacting. Right. And when I'm able to do that, when I'm able to figure out, wow, like this is having a real impact on people, all over the world, that drives me. That motivates me. That makes me excited. That makes me want to do what I do, even on days when I don't want to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's why I started this channel, right? Yeah. Because I love inspiring people, encouraging people. I call it putting fresh wind in their sails, if you will.
I love it.
Because you just never know, man, when somebody, that's the day they decided to quit. And maybe this interview today, maybe the one video, other content we made, maybe the one training we did causes them to go, you know what? I'm not going to quit. I'm going to keep going on. And I love that. I teach people this too, Glenn, is that I don't chase income. I chase impact, because I have found in my own life in 20 years plus of ministry and in the professional world that the more impact I've made, it's like the income just comes, man. Yeah, and I get ultimate fulfillment when I see other people win. It just brings me great joy. Now, don't get me wrong, I like the money too, but it brings me a joy, a next level joy that I can't get from the money. Right? Do you kind of experience that in your life as well?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And like you said, the income follows the impact. I really totally believe the more people I impact, the more money that more revenue that the company will generate. It really is that simple. But the money, and again, I can tell you this from firsthand experience, if you're focused solely on the money, it's not going to motivate you long-term.
Yeah, that's good.
Especially when you get to the point where your needs are met, right? Yeah. Like, what's the point at that? Like, if your needs are met, especially for the immediate future, like you have enough money, that you're not worried about the immediate future anymore, your motivation is going to essentially dwindle or disappear entirely. So yeah, I'm a huge believer on that impact. I love how you framed it. You know, the income follows the impact. That's fantastic.
Well, listen, this has been a great interview. You have brought some serious fire today. As we wrap up, just a couple of more things real quickly. I know before we came on camera, you said that we could offer my audience a code, FIRE10, right? All caps?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, it's going to be all caps, capital F, capital I, capital R, capital E, 10, FIRE10. Gets you guys 10% off any of our marketing services at Lead Heroes. And that's leadheroes.com, LEAD, heroes, HEROES.com. Check it out, you guys. If you're looking for final expense, Medicare supplement, turning 65 leads, or if you're looking to hire a virtual assistant or someone to make phone calls for you, we are here to help. That's what we do.
No, and thank you for being so gracious enough to do that. And we'll put all that in the video description when this drops in a couple of weeks. And by the way, even though it's not dropping right away, the code will still be good. We promise. We're going to make sure you get to 10%. I will say this. Glenn didn't ask me to say this. My wife and I have ordered 2 batches of leads, and we're closing roughly about 20 to 22%. So they have been good leads. Awesome. They have helped us. We're very thankful for that in different states. And so I truly believe it could be a supplement, right? It could help you fill in the gaps to what you're doing. Don't quit everything else you're doing.
Right.
Just use this, as Glenn said earlier, get good at it, right? Don't just start calling if you don't have any experience. Get some training, learn what you're doing, learn the products, because that's going to make a big difference. But as we wrap up today, 2 more things. One is just give us one good tip. Like for somebody right now that's still on the fence about maybe investing some leads, still looking for that good leads or the best leads at the end of the rainbow. You know, what is a tip that you would give somebody right now before they invest in some leads? Something that you just go, you must know this.
I think analysis paralysis kills a lot of agents and business owners and salespeople. You could look at 100 different lead companies trying to find that perfect lead company.
Sure.
You could do it in all aspects of your life. You can, I mean, we have the tools now where we can do so much research, but don't let perfection get in your way of progress.
Yeah, I like that.
Go ahead, do it. Yeah, just do it. Just go ahead and do it. Buy the lead, start learning, figure it out. You know, go with that company. You know, stop spending months doing research thinking you're going to find that magical solution, that silver bullet, because it doesn't exist. Perfection doesn't exist. It's not real.
Yeah. No, I love that. That was like a lightning round spitting fire right there. You were bringing it at the end. I like to say it this way. Listen, if you're watching this today, you need to go back and rewind, so to speak, and listen to what Glenn just said. I call it taking massive imperfect action.
Yes.
Right. A lot of you are waiting to hit a home run when the reality is most leaders will tell you they've been successful because they've hit singles, doubles, triples.
And
Quit always looking for the home run when it comes to leads. So last question here, Glenn, where can we find you? Obviously at leadheroes.com, but are you on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok? Where else can we find you?
Absolutely. So you guys, you can actually schedule a call with me directly through that website at leadheroes.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook. Our company also has a Twitter page, Instagram page. I mean, all over social media. You can shoot me an email direct, Glen, Glen, at leadheroes.com. Our company phone number, again, if you want to call in, it's 844-7-HEROES, which is 844-743-7637. Call in. You'll either talk to my assistant or potentially me directly myself. But again, Rob, I really appreciate you having me on. I really appreciate your time. This platform is awesome. I love what you're doing. And I also appreciate the kind words, with your experience. You guys crush it. And again, it's the user that defines the closing percentage. So what you're telling me is you guys put the work in, and you had success because of your work ethic, right?
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, they got to tell us a absolutely big O, or some other expletive in there, right? Before we stop calling them. Because here's the reality is, don't let a no keep you from the breakthrough in your business.
That's right.
Don't let a no keep you from your dreams, right? It's just a no, right? Yes. And I'm a Christian cuss here, Glenn, so forgive me. It's just a freaking no, right? It's just a no. That's Christian cussing, okay?
Yeah.
But listen, Glenn, I'm the one that's super thankful. I know you're a busy guy. You were so generous with your time today. And listen, guys, as we wrap this up today, the reason I do this is because I believe that all of you were created on purpose for a purpose. I truly believe that. And what better year to start living on purpose than in 2022? And maybe Glenn is the resource you need to tap into for your agency, because we're primarily dealing with insurance today. But for your agency to go to the next level, quit analyzing, quit getting lost in the weeds, as I would like to say. Take massive action today, no matter how imperfect it is. And I promise you, when you begin to take that action, it's like something just breaks through in your life. But I pray something we said today, whether it was about leads, leadership, whatever the case may be, I pray that it puts fresh wind in your sails and that you don't quit and that you go, you know what? I do deserve the win. This is my season. And if it's going to happen, it's going to have to be up to me. So I just want to say, God bless you guys. Once again, Glenn, thank you for coming on. Make it an awesome day, and we'll talk to you soon.